Well, we're back working on the Miata today. Miata Pontiac Astre, whatever you want to call it as a mashup. So I got the clearance between the transmission tunnel and the firewall set up now. So we got good clearance. Might come forward a little bit, but I think that should be good. Good and clear enough. But I'm not able to lift my transmission because General Motors, I usually set these about 3 degrees with the tail shaft of the transmission down. And that's what most people recommend, and the 10 or 11 vehicles I've done with that have never had a problem with vibration or oiling or anything else. So, still got some more to cut out, and I'll show you what I'm working on now. So we're inside the Astre part of the car now, and I had a little clearance issue. As you can see, this part of the floor pan for the Miata, or the Astre actually, was hitting here. I had a piece that was still in there. Had to make a clearance for the shifter selector, so I'll probably still have to mock that out a little bit. But the problem I'm having now is I still can't move it up, and what I'm finding is that right in here there's a rib. So this rib is contacting right about in here. So what I'm going to have to do is I'll probably just split this right back to here, fold this up a little bit, maybe recreate this dome eventually. But I don't want to take too much because if we use the original shifter, that's where it's mounted. So I think we should be okay. Just got to split this and see if I can lift transmission up. I think we finally got what we needed. Did some more cutting in the Astre transmission tunnel, and I'm just using a jack on the back of the transmission. So I was able to go up one click and went from about 4.5 degrees to 2.4 degrees. So that looks like that's going to work. Hopefully you can see we've got probably a 1/4 inch between the bottom of the oil pan and the steering rack. So that allows me to possibly raise that up just a touch, maybe go 3/8 of an inch or 1/2 an inch, and still play with the transmission height. So that's probably going to be pretty close to where the engine actually sits. But again, I'm just going to mock everything up and not do any welding till we get everything set. So I went ahead and removed the cover where the Pontiac's transmission shifter, automatic transmission shifter, had sat. So you can see we were hitting right up in here. So I think I'm going to do is probably just take it right off from here on both sides and just hump this up a little bit more, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do with the transmission shifter. But I think there's a little bit more clearancing needs to be done down around here on the pan, or above the pan, by the valve body, because we've got to make sure we can plug in the electrical connector, make sure there's no interference there. So I'll go underneath and start marking that up, so next time I take the transmission out, I can clearance that area. Well, we're back at it again, playing with the Miata subframe. So I want to remove the control arms and the spindle and stuff to put on the Roadster 2 subframe, so I can start looking at my wheel positions and looking at my ride height so I can compare it to start building the rear suspension. So I took everything off and got the passenger side front off, and I went to the passenger side, or driver's side front. I don't know if you can see it in the pictures or not, but the bolt's bent, and I literally can't get it out. And what I can see here, as you can see on this side, this is equal distance. This is not. So the control arm is bent up here and the bolt is bent. So I figure since this is a, I don't know, 23-year-old front suspension, it's probably, we're going to replace the ball joints, we're going to replace the control arm bushings, all that stuff anyway. So I just found a all-new set that has the bushings, it has the ball joints, it has everything. So I found where I can order one bolt. So I'll order one bolt, I'll strip the bolts out of these and get rid of the rest of it because it's not worthy anymore. And I don't know if the subframe's any good after that being bent, but we'll work on that later. So there we go. So I'm doing some calculations to determine the 4-bar lengths and how much everything changes. So what everybody says to do is make a little cardboard mock-up. So right now I've got my arm calculated as 24 inches center to center on the lower, and that's horizontal. The upper control arm, this is just a side view, is 70% of that with a 6-degree angle down, approximately. And what we want to look at is this is the front of the pinion where the drive shaft would be, and through its movement we want to see how much that changes. So the nice thing about the pegboard is everything isn't, off in inches. So if that's the center line, 1, 2, 3, 4, let's go 5 inches. We want to see how much the front of that moves. So it looks like it angles down. And then if we move 2 inches, 2, 3, 4 inches, it angles up. So I'm going to check where we're at. I don't think it'll be too bad, but I'd like to be able to measure it and see how much it's actually changing. So maybe I'll set it up and put my angle finder on it and see how much it's actually changing. So it's kind of hard to show because I put it up vertical, measured the angle in the back because that's going to be the same as the front, and I was about 90 degrees on this edge when this arm was horizontal. And when I moved it up 5 inches, I had it, in a sense, the rear end tipped down 5 degrees. So if we're up 3 degrees, that's just going to go to -2, which I think there's going to be plenty of play in the U-joints. So if we can go up -3, we can definitely go down to -2. So the drive line will be, or the drive shaft will be perpendicular to it. So that means it's going to go to a 5-degree angle. So I'll just have to check what the amount of movement that the U-joint has, but I think that should be fine because it looks like this is, in a sense, the same lengths and stuff a lot of the kits out there are, and they have suspension engineers with this is what they do all day, and I think everything should be fine. So do a little bit more research, but I think we're going to focus on a 24-inch lower bar. The top bar is about 16.8 inches with a 6-degree down angle. Now I just got to work out how to get my 6-degree included angle between the upper bars if you look at it from the top. There's just a packaging issue because we're putting big tires on this. So we'll figure it out. Show you more when we get there. So we're back on the Pontiac again. The owner brought me an 8.8 a while back. It is out of a Ford Explorer, so it's 373 limited slip with disc brakes. So I took of course, all the brakes and the lines off because it's actually in really good shape. So we're going to reuse all the lines, and the brake calipers are pretty new. The brakes are pretty new, the pads themselves. Unfortunately, the parking brake liners are gone, so we'll have to put new ones of those on. So I took the axles out, and then I'm just sitting here allowing it to drain. So I'm going to come get some tools, go back to the other shop, and we'll start getting prepped and ready to see where we're going to put the brackets for the rear suspension onto the housing. I have the indicator set up on the ring gear to check the ring gear backlash. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. Probably not. There we go. So I have it. Zero this. And I'm seeing about 15 thousandths. And I just checked a Ford document, and they said backlash should be between 8 to 12. So I guess we will have to get some shims and adjust this as necessary when we put it back together. So just wanted to see where we're at. Check the pattern. Couldn't get a good reading off of that because I don't know what I'm doing, but we'll check when we put it back together. I have my rear end just about drained. That doesn't sound very good. So I have the rear end all set up. I've got the fluid drained. Not cleaned it out yet. I haven't pulled the pinion out. And what I did was check the level this way of the rear end. So we're about a half a degree down on this end. Right now I'm just setting it up for mock-up. And I went and set the pinion angle at 3 degrees up. So it's high-tech, but it works really well. Next I'll show you my concept. This is kind of the concept I have for the brace and upper control arm at the rear housing mount. Just got a 1x2 rectangular tubing, I think it's 1/8 inch wall. And then I will probably cut it about 8.5 inches from center line. And then angle it down, these will come off. Angle it down to the housing and put a fish mouth on it. And then this is just the first cardboard template to enclose both sides. They'll probably be all different. But enclose both sides, you can weld it here. I don't think we can necessarily weld to the housing, but we can weld to the housing down here and then up that brace. I'll check on the housing. I think it's supposed to be steel, but I'll check on it. We could always weld that if we need to. Put a couple tacks on it, but that's the concept. And then 2 3/4 inches in, there'll be a mount. Now I kind of wish we got a Mustang rear end, but there'll be a mount with a Johnny joint going off to the frame. So it makes a nice level surface that we can mount that to, and it should be pretty strong because this is, I'm just kind of copying what the four-wheel drive guys do, both on this housing and on others. So we'll do some more research, but this is the concept. Well, there we have it in metal. So I took that piece, which was a 1x2, and cut 22.5 degree angles, relieve the bottom, and then bent it. So they're now both at 45 degrees. And of course I had to cope the 1x2 to fit over the axle. And then probably, I think I'm going to leave these are the original mounts for the sway bar. So I might leave those for right now. I'll have to relieve it a little bit back here because I've got to put a 3/16 plate on the back. It's a touch higher than I wanted here. I wanted a 1/4 inch, probably got about a 1/2 inch. And of course we'll have to relieve over here to go around the vent tube. But besides that, I'm really happy with it. So we'll have a piece of 3/16 plate that welds on here, possibly welds onto the housing, but for sure welds onto the tube. So I think that'll create a really strong base for the upper control arm mounts. It could be a tad high, but we'll have to check it in the chassis before we go too much farther, because on top of here, of course, will be the upper control arm mounts. So if anything, we can always lower this down some more. Just drop that down, but we're at that 1/2 degree at the top, so everything's parallel and level. And I changed my mind. I decided to remove the brackets mounts for the sway bar. So I got those cut off. I got the cut off for the perches on both sides. So I'm going to take a 40 grit flat wheel and remove all this, and then get in with a wire wheel and start removing all the paint and stuff. Well, the brackets are finally off. So I cut them off with the plasma cutters you saw. Then I took a 40 grip flapper wheel and removed all the brackets. So we are clean, and I hit it with the first time with the wire wheel to get the paint and stuff off. So got a little bit more left, but right now I'm happy with it. Well, I think I'm finally happy with it now. So I've got it so it is 3.5 degrees in the front, parallel with earth. It's parallel this way. Parallel that way. notched around the breather tube and all coped out. And I went back and dropped it down to, took about another 1/2 inch off from it. So I think it's ready to go. So I think I'm going to tack it to the housing, and then go ahead and make some, check my patterns out, but make some new patterns and start plasma cutting out some support braces. Well, the next step is complete. So I welded all the way around here on both joints. So we got 45 degrees on each side. Happy with that. Came through, of course, and welded the seams over here so I can start laying these plates in. So I'm going to check my templates and update my templates so they fit nice and snug. And then I plan on taking 3/16 plate and going parallel with the surface down so you can see it down to the axle surface. And then, of course, welding all along through here. I think this is actually steel because I see people online welding these. So I'm going to try to at least put a couple tacks in here, maybe a couple 1-inch beaters, and then fully weld this all the way across, up across the top, and then probably put some holes in there so I can plug weld them. So well, here's the first piece. This would be the passenger side rear, of course, and I'm very happy with it. It's just plasma cut out 3/16, and there's some trimming I can do to make it fit just a touch better. There's about a 1/16 gap down here. Probably bevel that so I get a better weld surface, and I can take a little bit here, a little bit here to kind of slide this over and make it fit better. But overall, I'm very happy with that, and I think that'll give us a nice surface. So we'll probably have our mounts up here, something that hangs over on both sides, of course, to give it a little bit more strength. But looks good. Let's just make. We now have the left side, or driver's side, on the back roughed out. So as you can see it over here, it's a little bit oversized and needs some trimming and fitting, but that's kind of how I designed it. And it does look a little bit like it's offset to the passenger side, but it's kind of hard to see. But right about where my finger is the center of the pinion. So as you can see, that makes it look a lot more centered. But anyway, we will continue moving forward and get the front ones done. So now I've got the front plates all cut out first. These are a lot simpler. And then I just finished grinding them, getting them all fitted to the brace. So those are basically done. Of course, I'll have to clean up around the housing here so I can weld that all together. But looking good so far. So now I got to take the back plates and fit those. As you can see, we got the rear plates all cut and fitted. So now what we're going to do is go down about 1 inch down and make a series of holes through here, probably 2 inches apart, just to do some plug welding. We'll weld up in here all the way around. And before we do that, we'll clean up all the steel so we get a good welding surface to weld to. And we'll hit everything with a good weld-through primer. Also, we'll clean up the housing, clean up the pumpkin, get that all cleaned up, put a good set of, or coat of primer on that. It should be ready to go. So, have everything prepped and ready now. So I cleaned everything. I went ahead and scuffed it up and hit it with alcohol and put on the weld-through primer. So also on the plates, did my 1/2 inch plug weld holes about every 2 inches, cleaned those up with alcohol and hit them with weld-through primer. So now we're ready to weld everything together. So I plan on just plug welding all the way up and through here, probably a couple welds across there for now. And then I'll go ahead and pop the tacks loose because I have to still come to the driver's side housing tube, and I've got to cut that off. 2 7/8 or 2 15 or 15/16. We'll get a final measurement on that. Right now, we're all ready to go. And there you have it. Let my welder cool down. So I did all the plug welds. Still got to do a seam weld here, and I just kind of did some stitches at the top. So just taking my time. So I think what I'm going to do now is go ahead and pop it off the housing. After it cools, I can do some finish welding on the bench, and we'll move on. So let's get this thing ready to cut apart. I finally got the housing figured out what the length actually is. So I'm going to have to take off about 1 1/16 on this side and exactly 4 inches on this side. So if I have from that surface to where the brake calipers mount, that needs to be 16.3 on each side, which will give me 49.1 overall. So decided to use a ET52 backspace, which is a little over 2 inches, which is common for the Mustangs. So they make a ton of aftermarket wheels for that backspace, and we can play around, go to a 50 or 55. Everything should be good. So I'm going to remove the section between the tape on each side, and then we'll put them back together. Let's see what it looks like. It took a while. There's just a lot of measuring to that, so went ahead and cleaned up the inside and the outside with alcohol. You can see I put a good chamfer here so my welder can, because I'm not going to weld it. I'm not that good yet, so I'll get a professional welder that's going to weld both sides for me. So I gave him a nice chamfer, and distance from here to the outside of here is 16 5/16 all the way around. So it looks pretty straight to me. We'll keep moving forward, and I'll show you more when I do the other side. Well, there you have it. 149.1 inch axle, custom built for a Pontiac Astre. We'll see how many of those are actually done. So, went ahead, tacked in the other side. This is the driver's side. Took about 4 inches out exactly. Got it all beveled up and cleaned up and got it tacked. So, still slightly warm, but we'll measure it up and take it to the welder. So I think that's going to be it for this session. We'll go ahead and try to get this posted today, and we'll start again tomorrow.